Welcome, I'm Jon Caldara, president of the Independence Institute and your devil's advocate. A little later, we're going to talk about a subject I know so well, loving thy neighbor. Just trust me on that one. But first, if your neighbor is homeless, what do you do? Initiative 300 will be on the Denver City ballot, which gives all sorts of right to survive for homeless here in Colorado. Cody Belzley, thank you for being here.
Thank you,
Now,
Jon.
you're not a fan of this.
I'm not.
I want to learn about it. I've read it. In all disclosure, I'm not a big fan of what I've read so far, but I want to get more of the details, and maybe closer we can get someone to debate it as well.
Sure.
What does 300 do?
Yep.
Put it as succinctly as possible.
So Initiative 300, which Denver voters will consider in May, basically creates the right to rest and shelter oneself in any or all public places. So it allows people, not just those experiencing homelessness, but anyone in the city and county of Denver, to camp in any public property indefinitely. So the definition of public property in this initiative is so broadly written that it would include parks, playgrounds, sidewalks, alleyways, even the mountain park system that the city and county controls outside of the boundaries of our community. And people could camp and live in those spaces as much as they want.
What I read were really three things.
Mm-hmm.
One is a right to rest,
Yep.
which says if I'm on a public property and I need my nap, I can sleep on the sidewalk.
Yep.
Although there was something that said you can't impede people. Mm-hmm. So that if somebody's asleep on the sidewalk, mm-hmm. they can be moved along to some place where they can sleep, where you can still walk by. Also, that I'll put it in derogatory terms. It seems like it's a squatters' rights initiative, which is I'm putting up my tent here in City Park. You can't tell me to take it down. And I can keep this up as long as I want to keep it up.
That's
this
correct.
is now my spot. And the other one that I don't think people have really thought about is that cars become homes. We've all had those times where we've camped in our car or we've slept in our car and didn't want to. And some people, unfortunately, have had to stay in cars a long time. Yeah. This would mean that they could stay in a car as long as it is legally parked for as long as they want.
Yep.
Which means, could they keep a car in one spot for weeks on end?
Absolutely. So the car does have to be legally parked, but in most of Denver's residential neighborhoods, there aren't time limits for parking because so many of Denver homes were built without garages that homeowners park on the street. And so there aren't 2-hour parking limits or there aren't meters in place. So in any of those places where parking is allowed without limitation, a person could be living in their car, RV, other vehicle on those streets indefinitely.
All right, let me do this. We have a homeless crisis, and I got to tell you where I am on this. I used to be very, very sympathetic because most of these people, and I'm not talking about the ones who are out on their luck and need a hand getting it back together. There are people with serious mental issues or people with serious dependency issues,
Absolutely.
often because of their mental issues. I'm starting to lose my patience. I work downtown. I drive by the homeless shelters every day to and from work. We clean up needles and trash cans and trash and use condoms and vomit and human feces. And when I'm cleaning this stuff off of our work area, right outside our building, on our porch on our building, I lose my sympathy. We have had to develop systems to chase people off from where our overhang is. We've had to put in new burglar alarms or new security alarms to try to keep them away. We've had to rearrange the landscaping to make it less habitable so people aren't sleeping in the bushes and turning tricks in the bushes. And I've had it. I've just had it. I don't see how this makes it a better situation.
You know, Jon, I can certainly understand where you're coming from. I think Denver has a real crisis when it comes to homelessness, and there is more we could and should be doing to help support people experiencing homelessness today. More importantly, to help address the complex causes that lead people to homelessness. But what's really critical about Initiative 300 is it does nothing to provide support, services, shelter, housing, job training, opportunities for people to get off the street for those who are experiencing homelessness today. And it does nothing to address the root causes of homelessness.
Would it be fair to call it more of a homeless bill of rights, and that says I'm homeless, you can't hassle me if I'm sleeping, You can't shake me out of if I want to camp on public land. You can't get rid of me if I want to stay in my car. These are my rights, and as a human being, I should be able to do it.
So there are homeless Bill of Rights laws that have been passed in other states and that have been considered at the state level. Interestingly, Initiative 300 actually goes beyond that. Initiative 300 is not specific to people who are experiencing homelessness. It's really a land use policy about how we want our public spaces to be used. And what's most concerning about Initiative 300 is it's coming under the guise of the homeless crisis facing Denver, but it does nothing to provide new resources, supports, or services for people experiencing homelessness today, or to address the causes of homelessness. So I would say really it goes far beyond a homeless Bill of Rights and really is a much more far-reaching and broad policy about how we are going to use our public spaces in Denver.
It was 12, 14 years ago when a mayor of Denver said, we're going to end homelessness forever in 10 years. Put more money into homelessness, and amazingly, they put more money in, and they got more of what they're paying for. More homeless services seem to have meant more homeless. I've seen the same thing in my hometown of Boulder, where we have also a huge homeless crisis. And it's hard to believe that with an economy on fire, now we have more homeless than when the economy in this town was so very shaky. And I remember it in the 80s. There was not the same problem. At the same time, I get it. We want to help these folks. We don't want them to be hassled. Tell me a little bit about the polling on this. Do you know anything about it? Is this likely to pass if people don't? What we know
is that people in Denver, like you described, see, interact with, interface with people who are experiencing homelessness all the time. Denver voters are concerned about the homeless population. They're concerned about what the city is or isn't doing to provide supports for people experiencing homelessness, and more importantly, to address the root causes of homelessness. And we're working really hard to make sure they understand that Initiative 300 is a risky proposal. It's an unprecedented proposal. No other city in the country has adopted a policy as far-reaching and sweeping as what's being proposed in Denver. So there's really no precedent for us to look to understand just all the implications of the policy, how to implement it appropriately in our community. And so we're working really hard in this campaign to make sure people understand that, to understand the risks of Initiative 300, and know to vote no on the policy.
This is on the ballot at the same time that there's a mayoral election. So where are the mayor candidates on this? Have any of them endorsed this, or any of them come out against it officially?
As far as we know, no candidate. Well, I should say this. I don't know for sure. I am not aware of any major candidate for city office in the spring who has endorsed the policy. And we're working hard to build a big coalition to oppose it.
Let's talk about the coalition.
Yep.
Now, if I owned any sort of retail establishment in Denver, I would be fearful of this. The last thing you want is to step over people and their trash on your way to a restaurant or a retail store. So I'm going to guess that there are a lot of businesses who are terrified of this.
You'd be right. Certainly, business owners are a key part of the Together Denver coalition, but we are a broad and diverse coalition that includes faith leaders, nonprofit organizations, neighborhood community leaders who understand that Initiative 300 doesn't provide any supports or services to help people experiencing homelessness today, does nothing to address the root causes of homelessness, and really opens the door to risky and far-reaching policy that will have major implications, not just for the people experiencing homelessness, but for our broader community. Another key group that has come out and concerned are parks advocates and environmental advocates who worry about the condition and safety of our parks and public spaces and the water quality of our rivers if people are allowed to take up residence and to camp in these places without basic infrastructure, without running water, without toilets. They worry about what will happen to our public places.
I've had folks come up and say, John, you're a civil libertarian. You believe in civil liberties.
Sure.
The government shouldn't tell people to move along. The government should let people rest. They don't have a right to do that. And I'm sympathetic with that. At the same time, you're creating a takings in that public property, that city park, is meant for everyone. The idea that someone can squat on it and say, I'm taking this spot and it's mine and you can't do it. We've seen these encampments. We've seen it in San Francisco. We've seen it throughout LA. This could be a devastation economically. I'm thinking for Denver. I don't know who wants to come to downtown Denver for an evening if that's what they're met with.
Certainly economic implications. I'm particularly concerned about our public health and safety implications of a policy like this. So you brought up San Francisco, Los Angeles, some of the other communities that have had experience with large-scale encampments. And what we have seen in these communities is the return of communicable diseases that we thought were essentially eradicated in the modern United States. Typhus, hepatitis, mumps. When people live together in very close quarters without basic infrastructure, without toilets and running water, unsanitary circumstances emerge, and those unsanitary circumstances lead to disease.
That's going to sound like you're insulting people. You're saying that these people are dirty. People are going to say you sound hateful. You're trying to scaremonger people into fearing this. When in fact these are just people who are down on their luck, and the last thing they need is to be hassled and told to move along. They deserve a place that they can rest.
I appreciate that concern. What we're trying to do with Together Denver is to share the facts about the experiences of other communities that have dealt with large-scale encampments. We're not passing judgment on the individuals who find themselves homeless, the folks who don't have other options. I think we have a lot of sympathy for folks who are in that position. What we're trying to point out, however, is that there are better approaches. There are better ways to support people experiencing homelessness by connecting them to service providers who can put a roof over their head for the night, who can connect them to job training and job skill services to connect them with affordable housing.
For decades here, I think of successful programs like Step 13 now, Step Denver.
Sure.
And they have an incredible rate of success with the people that they work with. But other than that, I see that we're giving more, we're providing more services, and the problem is getting worse and getting worse. Pardon me for using an economic term, but it seems as though when you tax something, you get less of it. When you subsidize something, you get more of it, and we are getting more homeless.
I appreciate that point of view, John, and see your rationale with it. I also think that Denver is just growing. I mean, this is in part the growth of our homeless population is related to our overall community growth and to the fact that the cost of living in Denver is increasing as the economy, as you described, is on fire. It's getting harder and harder to find affordable places to live in Denver. Our community is gentrifying, it's changing. And, those are realities that we're facing as a community.
The other reality, when I see someone who is using drugs and medicating themselves, if downtown Denver has an expensive rent, there are places outside of Denver where you can afford to do that. I think it's because there's a concentration of people, therefore they can beg for more money. I office next to a liquor store, and there are a lot of beggars around, and one is very honest, at least, and holds up a sign that says, "Beer research, $1." And we talk every time I pass him and say, "How's business today?" And he complains that it's not nearly enough. But he seems to be a perfectly able person. I'm worried that this could pass. How are you going to defeat it?
Well, we're working hard to get out and talk to as many voters as we can through opportunities like this, as well as just good old-fashioned shoe leather work. We're getting out to registered neighborhood organizations, knocking on doors, communicating with people through social media.
Is this just businesses that want this? I mean, because this is going to be pegged as a bunch of rich corporate types don't want those ugly people in their neighborhoods. What about the people who care for homeless? Where are they?
Yeah, so many of the nonprofit service providers who work with people experiencing homelessness have released statements in which they have expressed concerns about Initiative 300. And I want to be very clear, those service providers indicated that they're not proponents of 300, they're also not opponents of 300, but they are experts who work with this population all the time. And they're concerned about institutionalizing life on the street and the fact that normalizing this could actually make it harder to serve people who need help and services. One of the details of this policy is that it actually makes it a crime to harass, threaten, or terrorize someone who's exercising their rights under this policy, but it doesn't define what is meant by harass or terrorize or threaten.
So help me understand how the folks who work with the homeless, how they feel about this initiative, because they want to help these people. This must help them.
So actually, the Colorado Coalition for the Homeless and a group of homeless service providers called the Homeless Leadership Council each released statements last week outlining their concerns about 300. They worry that institutionalizing life on the streets actually creates barriers to helping folks get services. One of the things that's included in this initiative is a provision that says it's illegal to harass or terrorize people exercising their rights under these laws, but it doesn't define what harass or terrorize is. So someone who's claiming the right to rest, who gets approached by a social worker or a firefighter or a paramedic who's trying to offer supports and services, if that person feels as though they're being harassed, they could actually bring a lawsuit against this outreach worker. And so service providers are concerned that institutionalizing.
Have they officially come out, or are they staying neutral on this?
They're staying neutral on the
Even
initiative.
if they're staying neutral, that says volumes that a group that will, in a knee-jerk way, always come out for a homeless program is saying, we're not certain about this.
Yeah, so I should be really clear. They are not part of Together Denver. They are not opposed to Initiative 300, but they do have concerns.
People want to get more information and get involved in this. Where do they go?
TogetherDenver.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We would love to connect with Denver voters and get them engaged this spring.
Cody, thank you. Stay tuned.